there was a very strong sentiment that trade, growth, and shared prosperity, and not the traditional practice of aid, are critical objectives of the Africa-Nordic meeting. All of us emphasize the importance of trade and economic growth, and that this should be the bedrock of the partnership that we build out of these meetings and these deliberations. Thirdly, we all expressed a shared commitment and intention of collaborating on youth and people engagement initiatives, and on strengthening partnership in skills development, particularly for what one may call scarce skills, and skills for emerging economic sectors. We also had very strong reference to the need for all our efforts to strengthen and promote gender equality. Fourthly, we agreed that sustaining peace and democracy, as well as good governance in all our countries, are important goals for us to pursue, while much of our deliberations on good governance and on democracy centered around Africa. I think at times there was a hint that all of us are experiencing problems, and it's not just the African continent. In some countries, we see a move to what is termed radical right wing or radical left wing, and so all of us are challenged by the need to attend to the key attributes of democracy and to ensure in all our societies that we respect human dignity. We also really asserted the need for us to equally observe and respect international law, and that equity and justice are critical ambitions for our societies today. There was resounding support for the business partners meeting, and a strong view that this should be a natural part of the meetings that we hold as Africa and the Nordic region. We also began to suggest that perhaps we could have, as part of our meeting, an Africa-Nordic business forum, where perhaps each of the various ministers could bring one or two business people to the summit, and they could hold a separate Nordic Africa business forum as a natural outcome of the maturing of this meeting. Sixth observation was that we're not doing enough on marketing Africa properly. We need to market our continent more effectively, and countries on the continent, and we need to highlight the many progressive changes that have occurred over the years, as well as the limitless opportunities that exist on the African continent, and make these known to the broader society in our Nordic partner countries. On the matter of peace and security, we articulated strong views on the need for reform of the United Nations Security Council, as well as a commitment to seeing a reduction in harm and to ending harm in conflict zones. We also said particular focus needs to be given to the situations on the African continent, particularly Sudan, where there's massive loss of life, abuse of human rights, and huge suffering caused by the absence of humanitarian aid. Similar sentiments were expressed with respect to the unfolding events in Gaza and the need to ensure respect for the United Nations Charter and the matter of sovereign integrity, particularly with respect to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We agreed that the world is in a troubled space and that we should give more attention as this grouping to building global collaboration and solidarity on positive values and principles. We also agreed that perhaps we need, as Africa and the Nordic countries, to pay a bit more attention to what happens to resolutions that we adopt very happily at the United Nations, but that are never implemented. And that together, perhaps, we can be a unified grouping for greater action on our decisions and for the reform of the UN to include follow-through and action on decisions that we agree upon as part of the restoration of credibility in multilateralism. On environment and sustainability, we agreed that climate finance commitments should be honored and that we should see action on decisions at the various COP meetings, particularly important decisions such as the Loss and Damage Fund, agreements in Paris, and the various commitments that were made in the Paris round. We also agreed there should be action on technology transfer, which has been much discussed and not really seen in practice, as well as action on partnerships on adaptation and mitigation. Finally, we agreed that we can play a role as this grouping in arresting the decline in respect for multilateral institutions and for international law, and that we could do this by developing a much stronger partnership between the African Union, the UN, and ourselves as the African Nordic grouping.